The purpose of this video is to give you some insight on how the brain and mind process anxiety and depression. So I like to use a 3-story building as an analogy of the brain. So in this 3-story building, on the top level, you have your thinker, and this is your orbital prefrontal cortex. On the second level, you have your library. This stores all information from the time you're born until present, and this is your hippocampus. And then the bottom level is your security. This is what checks everything at the door through the 5 senses. And nothing gets into your brain without coming in through security, and this is your amygdala. Let me give you an example of what this looks like. So let's say I'm walking in a park, and at the corner of my eye, I see something black and slithery. My brain is going to interpret that as a threat because my hippocampus, which is my middle level library, has been programmed to say snakes are dangerous. So when it comes in through my 5 senses, it triggers the alarm system to move away from what I think is a threat. And as I move away from that threat, I look back, and now I'm engaging the top of my brain, which is my thinker. I look, and it's a rubber hose. Well, rubber hoses aren't dangerous, so my executive part of my brain gives the order to shut the alarm off. Now I calm down. But let's say I never looked back. I never engaged my higher thinking. I just got in my car and left. Well, the next day, my daughter says, "Hey, Dad, let's go to the park." My brain's going to pull that file out, which has the park, the swing set, the bush, and the snake, and it's going to say, "Don't go." And it's going to do that using anxiety as a mechanism. And so that anxiety is trying to keep me away from that threat. But here's the truth. There is no threat. It's a rubber hose. I just never looked back. But I've convinced my brain of a threat that's not real. And this happens a lot in our lives. And it may happen in yours, where you have triggers that are spread out in your day or in your week or in your month that are causing your brain to interpret snake instead of rubber hose. And so going forward, we're going to find out where those snakes are versus rubber hoses. Now, let's talk about depression. Depression is the brain's way of dealing with loss or isolation. So both of those things can cause depression. So loss, for instance, if it's job loss, if it's loss of a loved one, if it's loss of status, you moved where you've lived for like many years and you move all of a sudden, that's loss of residence. So anything that's a loss can cause depression. If you isolate, if you're used to being around people, all of a sudden you move away and you don't have your friends, you don't have your family, fights where they have relationship issues, and then they just isolate because of that, well, that also can cause depression. There's many things that can cause depression, but they usually fall into the 2 categories of loss and isolation. For instance, I use the analogy of a stove. If I put my hand on a stove and it's hot, I'm going to feel pain, and I should feel pain. It's my body's way of processing dangers, take my hand off the stove so I don't burn it to the bone and lose my hand potentially. So depression is similar. It's a warning system. It warns you that something's wrong. There's something missing. We deal with depression similar to how we deal with anxiety. We have to track and see what is triggering the depression. I want you now to take this opportunity to start tracking what I call triggers. So let's say it's Monday morning, you wake up, your job is from that point on for the rest of the day and the rest of the week is to track when you have a negative spike in emotion or anxiety. What that means is if I'm going through my day and I feel really anxious, my job is to say, "Hey, what time is it? And who have I been around in the last hour? Where am I at?" So what, who, and where. All you got to do is write those 3 things down and then go about your day. The idea is when you come into therapy for a session, we can go over what are your triggers, what's triggering you with either anxiety or depression or both. And that'll help you and I both get to work faster.